Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon episode 9. Finally managed to tie Empire Cartridges down. Obviously both being quite busy and with obvious technical difficulties. The recording was started this morning and we got quite a lot of information down. Halfway through, I think he had to take a delivery or fill up the forklift, so there might be a bit of a break and a bit of a continuity issue, but hopefully that shouldn't be noticeable throughout the podcast. But we covered a few good points, and let's get this podcast started. Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon Podcast. Today, finally, we've managed to catch up with Andrew, the owner of Empire Cartridges. It's been a bit difficult because obviously he's a busy boy and lots of things going on, and we've had a few technical difficulties along the way. Anyway, let's get started. And Andrew, can you give us sort of a bit of background about yourself and how you brought a cartridge company to life?
So I was originally a product design engineer, and the cartridges was started. It's really me and my father who started the business. It was a project we sort of thought about back in, well, I've been thinking about it since maybe 2010, but I only really got around to bringing it to life and sort of starting the process in 2017.
Okay, so it's kind of sat in the pipeline for quite some time then.
Yeah, it's been something that's been always talked about and on the cards for probably, like I say, probably since like 2009, 2010, on the basis that it's, there's a lot of scope within cartridges and it was getting very complicated, and the actual manufacturing of them is it's a relative, once you get past the sort of marketing side of things, shotgun cartridges is a relatively simple product, and so we felt like a streamlining of what was available. There was a space in the market for something that was just almost like a no-nonsense brand of, this is a cartridge, this is the way, this is what it does, and that's sort of where we're positioning ourselves with it. So fortunately, the barriers to setting up a shotgun cartridge company are the fact you need to be regulated by the health and safety executive, and they regulate all the because you're basically manufacturing an explosive. So to meet all their regulations, you need quite a specific site to operate from.
Is that just because of like having to store powder and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so all your buildings have to be a certain distance apart, and then you've got to get all the licenses for storing it and importing it, and that's really your main barrier to setting up a cartridge company. The machinery, the components are all pretty readily available. It's just a case of investment. But if you can't find the site, and you would have to find the site before applying for the license. So if you don't already own the site, it's a bigger investment up front to potentially not even be able to start the company.
So I'm assuming you had a site, or you knew of somewhere that was ideal for.
We already had a site that we thought would possibly work. So basically, the first step in the journey was, we'll see if we can get the license to do it, and that was probably the first 18. So after the home loading and all that kind of stuff and messing around and doing that kind of, and getting into it and thinking, yeah, we could probably do this commercially. The second stage is, right, can we get the license to operate and set the company up? And that probably took 18 months, I reckon, to get from application to getting the license and what they call a fixed rules license. So the HSE have a set of criteria, and if you can comply with those criteria, it's a relatively simple application process. If you can't, then you have to start paying them to come up with methods for you to comply, which is a very expensive process. Which is how a lot of the existing manufacturers will be operating, because they've got their legacy sites and things like that, so they'll have to probably do more in the way of infrastructure to make sure that they are complying with the requirements of the HSE.
So that kind of brings us on to sort of the second question, is like, how are you competing against some of the sort of the bigger players like Game Boar and Ely and things like that? Where's your standing in the market, do you think?
So we're not, in a way, we're not really competition for them. Obviously it's a market that isn't growing, so any sales we make come from somebody else. But I would say we get the sales from the people who maybe want to deal on a more personal basis with the manufacturer and with a company that are a bit more grassroots. So we're a cartridge brand for the enthusiast shooter. So for the person who's really into it, knows what they want, and sort of wants that more personal touch, I would say. That's where we are at the minute.
I suppose that's how we came to deal with you quite a lot. Obviously, buying large bulk cartridges and shipping up to Scotland, it was always a bit of a, can you make a following load, like a 24-gram 5 or something like that? We've got some people that want to shoot that for game. And I think that was it. You were very accommodating. And
which to be fair to the big players, they can't be, because, you know, they've got a much bigger operation. And if every time someone phoned up and said, I want 10,000 20-gram 5s, if you stop the machine, you know, it'd be an absolute nightmare for them.
Yeah, I know. I can imagine that. But how's your standing? Do you reckon, sort of in the market? Do you think you've got a good customer base now that's pushing you forward?
I think so. Yeah, and I think we've got a reasonably good reputation out there, and we're not challenging anyone yet. But it's a long road. We've only been at it for probably 3 years, proper, you know, in a big way, you know, proper commercially, and 2 of those have been not the best for selling things, I would say. And
I was going to say that
crazy.
That brings me on to sort of, that was the next sort of question. How is the business going? Obviously, you say 3 years, and 2 of those are bang smack in the middle of the pandemic, which kind of put a halt to most shooting and game sports and things like that. So how are you coping with that sort of situation?
For us, it's not a big deal to upscale and downscale. You know, if demand goes down, we just reduce the production. If it goes up, we increase the production, because we've not got loads of staff, and it's as automated as it can be.
You obviously post a lot of pictures on social media of your automation and packaging machines and stuff like that. So is that something that you've had a hand in customizing and designing? Yeah,
so we've built all that ourselves, the packaging side of things, and having a lot to do with that, because the commercial solutions available are very expensive and not really geared up for what we're trying to do, and not automated enough. And what I don't want to be doing is paying people minimum wage to pack shotgun cartridges. It's not really where we want to be. We don't want to be employing people on minimum wage. We want to employ people on good money for doing valuable tasks.
Yes, no, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's better to have a machine.
Or not employ anybody. So it's better to either automate it or employ someone to do something good, that's adding a lot of value. You can pay them a good amount of money rather than sort of a minimum wage job, which, you know, it's not where we want to be.
That sounds.
We do a lot of automation.
That sounds good. So I suppose the burning question, obviously, we've got a cartridge company. You've started up 3 years ago. You've gone through the pandemic, and then the world press kind of announced that there's a potential lead ban on the way. Obviously, most of Empire cartridges that we see on the market at the moment are all lead based. You have started doing something with copper. But where's the future for Empire going with this lead ban looming?
So for us, the plan is probably by the middle of next year we'll be wholly a steel shotgun or non-toxic manufacturer. So we'll have probably phased out lead. Mostly, if maybe we'll probably be doing it for continuing for a few clay cartridges, maybe some very specialist game loads for people who really want them and are willing to pay the premium, but by and large, it will be a predominantly steel-based market. And I say that because from the clay side of things, it's not out there to buy yet, but we've got a clay steel load that is, a good load, and it's a very competitive thing price-wise for the clay shooters, because obviously the price of clay cartridges is getting very expensive. So
yeah, it used to be you could go and do clays and it was quite cheap, and then suddenly all of a sudden by the time you've got the clays and a box of cartridges, suddenly the price is Yeah, it's not as cheap as it used to be as a weekend sport, was it?
Yeah, so we can do like a plastic wood and clay cartridge with steel for not half the price of the lead cartridge, but probably 30 or 40% less.
That sounds good. So you get you're going to get a lot more people wanting to come and buy a cartridge from you guys rather than going and getting sort of the main dealers who are selling quite expensive cartridges. So that's a good business opportunity, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've got a biodegradable wad in production at the minute, and if we can do it with the bio, and so because the other part of this is we'll try and switch to pretty much wholly biodegradable wads. So there'll be a steel clay cartridge with a biodegradable plastic wad, and then there'll be the game cartridges with the biodegradable plastic wads.
Yeah, because at the moment your lead cartridges are all fibre, but you have got some biodegradable gas seals in there. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because you obviously we always get asked questions about these little plastic discs, and it's like, no, they're a compostable gas seal, aren't they?
Yeah, and the material we're using, it's not a industrial compostable material like some of the things that have been out there on the market and take quite a long time to degrade. It's TUV certified soil compostable, so it is certified, tested that it will compost in soil. So it's not going to disappear in 2 or 3 weeks. It's not going to happen, but it is going to go within 6 weeks to 6 months, depending on the environment. And by next season, it will have disappeared into the ground. And even on top of the ground, you can see them, they start to break down and you can tear them apart. So it is something that is definitely, it's as good as the fibre wad in terms of degradation time.
Yeah, so at least we can say to keepers and things like that see them on the ground and don't worry about it. It is actually compostable. It will break down, because I think that's the biggest thing. I think we had a load of cartridges, and then I had people asking questions about these little plastic discs, and it's like, I think I was pinging you messages just on the shoot day going, are they biodegradable? And you're like, yeah, no, they do break down. Everything's fine there. Don't worry.
Don't bother putting it in a cup of water, because it will just stay there for a long time. They do degrade in water as long as there's like bacteria in there, so it will go. But if you put it in a cup of sterile tap water, it'll stay there forever.
It'll just sit there quite happily.
Yeah, because it's designed to be stable in wet conditions. So it's not going to be something that if it gets damp, it's going to start to degrade in the case. Or if you keep it in a moist environment, it's not going to degrade in the case.
Okay, yeah, because that was obviously always a problem with old paper cartridges, wasn't it? If you got them damp, that was it. They were pretty much done. They didn't work.
Yeah. And the water-soluble wads, that's the problem. We tried some water-soluble wads and found that the material when we loaded it was too unstable for us to load consistently and put out a stable product onto the market.
When you say a water-soluble wad, is that like a plastic wad that is designed to break down when it gets wet?
Yeah, so when you could drop it in a cup of water and it would dissolve into mush.
I think there have been problems, haven't there, with other cartridge manufacturers with these, where they've kind of got damp and they turn into like a solid block and everything gets stuck together, and it's almost like shooting a slug at the end of the day. Yeah,
there's been a few. It's not a new thing, a water-soluble wad. It's been around for probably 10 years, if not more, longer, and that's always been the issue with a PVA-based wad. That
right.
Trying to make sure it remains stable throughout the lifetime of the cartridge is a challenge, because obviously you could have a cartridge and load it today and it would still fire in 10 years from now.
Yes,
they're not a product that has a shelf life, really. The powder, they might not be quite as fast, but on the whole, you aren't going to know the difference as a shooter, in my opinion.
No, absolutely.
Really, it's better to have them loaded so they're pretty new, but if you have a slab of cartridge that's 10 years, 20 years old, it's still going to do the job for you.
Well, looking at some of the shooters that I spend time with, they've got cartridges that date back to the 60s that they pull out occasionally on shoot days and stuff like that. So, yeah, we're looking at cartridges that have been kicking around for a long, long time, but they still go bang at the end of the day and things still fall out the air. But I suppose it's just, it's having that cartridge that you at least put it in your shotgun and you pull the trigger and it does go bang rather than does nothing.
Yeah. Or
So that,
worst of all, blows the gun up.
well, yeah, exactly. There is that always is a major concern, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So sort of taking on that going forward, it's like you were talking about these biodegradable wads. So is that something that you as a company have looked into manufacturing, or are you looking to just buy them in from somewhere?
So we're partnered with an injection molding company who we've done the development work with, and we've got a patent on molding the material. So it's a material that can be molded into other things. So it's kind of a partnership in as much as we're going to make wads and then it'll grow into other products. We'll probably end up doing the wad manufacturing here on the site,
Right.
via cartridges. Once we get the tooling all sorted out, we'll bring it to here and then they can carry on making all the other products that they make. But it is something that is unique to us as a manufacturer because we've done the development work with the molding company.
So this is kind of going to put Empire that slightly one step ahead potentially of all your competitors out there.
Well, at least put us on par with the ones who've got their own wad, to be honest, and then we can sort of move into other gauges and other sizes then as well.
Okay, yeah, because obviously that was a sort of another thing that I think we get a lot of questions whenever we're trying to put orders together, people wanting to know whether or not you're going to make anything other than sort of 12-bore cartridges.
Yeah, we are. It's the plan. And also the wads, the wad company will be possibly a separate entity, so that people will be able to buy those separate to Empire Cartridges. So although it's proprietary to us, we are going to sell them. It's going to be in an entity on its own that is going to be a wad manufacturer.
Okay, so does that mean like the home loader could come to you and buy 1,000 wads or something like that, or is it just going to be?
Exactly, yeah. They can have 1,000. They can buy them off the website, but also if another manufacturer wanted to load them, we'll sell them to them as well. So it's not we're not going to keep it and try and make it so you have to have the wad and the biodegradable element of it. You've got to buy our cartridges. Someone else wants to load them with their powder combination and shot combination, then that's fine as well.
That's fantastic. So at least it's sort of another arm to the business that basically means that if game shooting does start to slow down a bit, and the clay shooting kicks off and people want to home load again and go down that route, at least you've got something that keeps you going, I suppose, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, very good, very good. So, I think we've covered, well, so you've got no real panics about sort of the imminent lead ban. You're well and truly keeping cool and under control moving forward, I take it.
Yes, for me, I'm not worried about it. All the powder we use is relatively suitable for a transition to steel. Our supplier has, some more good steel powders. It's easy to get them. They're not ridiculously expensive at the minute. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about it all.
Because I think that was one thing. Your powder is a bit of a special mix, isn't it? That it's unlike a lot of other powders out there. It's slightly different in the Empire cartridges at the moment.
So we use double base powder, which is similar. Which most other company manufacturers use single base powder. Game Balls, the Alliant steel powder, I think that's a double base powder, and a lot of the American powders are double base. But that's the main difference, and it really just takes up less volume in the case. It can be dirtier. That is the only thing I would say. We do have is a bit some more not unburnt powder, but powder residue.
Unfortunately, Andrew got called away to take a delivery, and we kind of ended the podcast there. But he was just talking about the powder residue in the cartridges, and anybody that shot the Empire cartridges, especially the lighter loads, will notice that their barrels are slightly dirtier than shooting other cartridges. Again, it's nothing to worry about. It's just a bit of sort of powder residue up the barrels. But if you like clean barrels after you've shot a load of cartridges, obviously it's a bit of a shock when you look down your barrels and notice there's sort of flakes of black and things like that in them, but it doesn't have any ill effect on the actual shooting, and the cartridges work really well. I think we tried to get Andrew back, but unfortunately he was either taking a delivery or just work kicked in, and that was that. So we'll try and catch up with him at some other point, and have another chat with Empire, but we did cover quite a few things there. We obviously covered the future of the cartridges, how they're moving away to completely steel, and hopefully we will see their new wad hit the market, which will be quite interesting because obviously anybody that's out there that does their own loading of shotgun cartridges will get the opportunity to buy a biodegradable wad from a locally UK manufactured company. Well, that was the interview with Empire Cartridges. Sorry it was cut short, but Andrew obviously got called away to do other things. If there's any questions or anybody has anything they want to ask, either pop onto the Empire Cartridges social media pages and fire away. Go and have a look at their cartridges. They are very reasonably priced, and actually they are coming in cheaper than some of the leading manufacturers. You can buy a slab, 250 cartridges, or you can buy by the 1,000, up to whatever your limit wants to be. Again, they will always do a good price, and the more you buy, the better the price gets. So it's certainly worth having a look at if you've got a syndicate or you have a group of mates that want to shoot a nice cartridge. I would strongly recommend having a look at the Empire ones. Thanks for listening again, and we will catch you in the near future with another podcast.